Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Meridian, looking out at the strange purple sky of the fourth moon. The year was 2387, and his ship had been traveling through space for 3 months to reach this distant place. His crew of 200 people were excited but nervous. They had come here to study old alien ruins, but nobody knew what they might find. The moon was cold and empty. No plants grew here, and no animals moved across its rocky surface. But deep underground, something waited. Something that had been sleeping for thousands of years. Dr. Lisa Carter walked onto the bridge carrying her equipment. She was the team's expert on alien history and culture. Her job was to study any old buildings or objects they might find. She had studied many dead alien worlds before, but this one felt different somehow. "Commander, we're ready to start digging," she said. "The scans show large structures about 50 feet underground. They're huge, much bigger than anything we've seen before." Jake nodded. "Good work, Doctor. Take your team down and be careful. We don't know what's down there." As Dr. Carter left the bridge, Jake thought about why they were really here. The human colonies were in trouble. A group of alien races called the Dominion Fleet had been attacking human worlds for 2 years. They had already destroyed 3 colonies and killed millions of people. The Dominion was led by a race of lizard-like aliens called the Korthic, and they seemed to hate humans. Back on Earth, Admiral Karen Phillips was trying to protect humanity with what ships they had left. But everyone knew it wasn't enough. The Dominion had bigger ships, better weapons, and more soldiers. Humanity needed help, and they needed it fast. That's why Jake's mission was so important. Old alien ruins sometimes contained advanced technology that humans could use. If they were lucky, they might find something that could help win the war back down on the moon's surface. Dr. Carter and her team began to dig. They used special machines that could cut through rock like butter. Tony Blake, the team's best engineer, operated the heavy equipment, while Rachel Ford, another engineer, monitored the machines to make sure they didn't break anything important. After 6 hours of digging, they found something amazing. The machines had broken through into a huge underground space. When they lowered cameras down, they saw buildings made of a strange blue metal that seemed to glow with its own light. "Commander Morrison, you need to see this." Dr. Carter called over the radio. Her voice was excited, but also scared. Jake came down to the dig site with Commander Linda Hayes, his security chief. Linda was a tough woman who had fought in many battles against the Dominion. She always carried her weapon and never trusted anything that seemed too good to be true. When they looked at the camera feeds from underground, everyone became quiet. The alien city was beautiful, but also frightening. The buildings twisted and curved in ways that hurt to look at. Strange symbols covered every surface, glowing softly in the darkness. "How old is this place?" Jake asked. Dr. Carter checked her instruments. "The metal shows signs of being here for at least 50,000 years, maybe longer. Whatever race built this, they're long gone." Lieutenant Ben Murphy, the ship's navigation officer, was studying the symbols on his computer. "Sir, I'm picking up some kind of energy reading from the center of the city. It's weak, but it's definitely there." Jake made a decision. "We're going down. Carter, Blake, Hayes, you're with me. Murphy, you stay up here and monitor everything. If something goes wrong, get the ship ready to leave fast." The team put on their protective suits and went down into the alien city. The air was thin but breathable. Their lights cut through the darkness as they walked between the strange buildings. Everything was silent except for the sound of air. Footsteps dot as they got closer to the center of the city. Dr. Carter's equipment began picking up more energy signals. "It's getting stronger," she whispered. "Whatever's down here, It's still working after all these years. They found the source of the energy in a large building that looked different from the others. This one was smooth and round, like a giant egg made of metal. Strange crystals grew from its walls, and they pulsed with soft light. Inside the building, they discovered something that changed everything. The walls were covered with pictures and symbols that told a story. Dr. Carter worked quickly to translate what she could understand. "This is incredible," she said. "These people called themselves the Etherians. They lived all across this part of the galaxy 50,000 years ago. But something destroyed them. Something terrible." The pictures showed the Etherians fighting a great war against dark creatures from another dimension. The aliens had built a special weapon to protect themselves and others. They called it the Starweaver. According to the story on the walls, the Starweaver wasn't just a ship. It was alive somehow, able to think and feel and make its own decisions. The Etherians had put their best technology and their strongest magic into creating it. The ship could change its shape, bend the laws of physics, and protect entire worlds from harm. But the most amazing part was what happened next. The pictures showed the Starweaver winning the war and driving away the dark creatures. But instead of staying with the Etherians, the ship had gone to sleep, waiting for a new race to find it. A race that would prove worthy of its power. "Look at this last picture," Dr. Carter said, pointing to a symbol near the end of the story. The Etherians believed that one day a young race would find their ship. A race that was brave and good, but also in great danger. The Starweaver would wake up to help them, just like it helped the Etherians long ago. Jake stared at the pictures. The description of the young race sounded exactly like humanity. They were brave, they tried to be good, and they were definitely in great danger from the Dominion fleet. "Doctor, are you saying this ship might still be here somewhere?" He asked before Dr. Carter could answer. Tony Blake called out from across the room. "Commander, you need to see this. I found something." In the center of the room was a pedestal holding several crystal fragments. These crystals were different from the others. They were clear as glass, but seemed to contain swirling clouds of light. When Tony touched one of them, it began to glow brighter. "These are data storage devices," Dr. Carter said. "They contain information about the Starweaver, maybe even instructions on how to find it." Suddenly, alarms began ringing from their radios. Lieutenant Murphy's voice came through, filled with panic. "Commander Morrison, we have a problem. I'm detecting multiple ships entering the system. They're not human." Jake's blood turned cold. "How many ships, Murphy?" "At least 50, sir. Maybe more. They're big ones, too. Dominion dreadnoughts, by the look of them." Linda Hayes grabbed Jake's arm. "Sir, we need to leave now. If the Dominion gets their hands on this alien technology." But Dr. Carter was still studying the crystals. "Wait," she said. "I think I know where the Starweaver is. According to this data, it's sleeping somewhere in this system. We just have to find it." Jake had to make the hardest decision of his life. They could run away and save themselves, but then the Dominion would capture the alien technology. Or they could stay and try to find the legendary ship, risking all. Their lives? He looked around at his team. These people trusted him to make the right choice. The fate of humanity might depend on what he decided right now. "Murphy," he said into his radio, "prepare the ship for immediate departure. But we're not leaving the system. We're going to find that ship." The legend was about to become real. The USS Meridian raced through space as fast as its engines could carry it. Jake Morrison sat in his captain's chair, watching the stars blur past. Behind them, 50 Dominion warships were hunting for his vessel. But Jake wasn't running away. He was following the map hidden in the Etherian crystals. Dr. Carter worked at her computer station, trying to understand the alien data. The crystals contained thousands of years of information about the Starweaver. According to the records, the ship was hidden in the asteroid field near the system's largest gas giant. "Commander, the crystals are showing us the way," she said. "The Starweaver is sleeping inside a hollowed-out asteroid. The Etherians hid it there after the Great War ended." Tony Blake was studying the ship's power readings. "Sir, those Dominion ships are gaining on us. Our engines are good, but theirs are better. We have maybe 6 hours before they catch up." Jake nodded grimly. 6 hours to find a ship that might not even exist anymore. 6 hours to save humanity from destruction. No pressure at all. Lieutenant Ben Murphy was piloting the ship through the dangerous asteroid field. Space rocks the size of cities floated all around them. One wrong move would smash the Meridian into pieces. "Commander, I'm reading some kind of energy signature from the large asteroid ahead. It's faint, but it's there." Rachel Ford looked up from her engineering station. "That energy pattern matches what we found in the ruins. Whatever's in that asteroid, it's connected to the Etherian technology." The asteroid was enormous, easily 5 miles across. It looked normal from the outside, just another space rock. But the ship's scanners showed hollow spaces inside, like someone had carved out rooms in tunnels. "Take us in slowly, Murphy," Jake ordered. "Everyone stay alert. We don't know what we're going to find in there." The Meridian approached opening in the asteroid's surface. It was perfectly round and just big enough for a ship to pass through. As they entered, their lights revealed a tunnel that went deep into the rock. Commander Linda Hayes checked her weapons. "Sir, this feels like a trap. What if the Dominion set this up to catch us?" "The Dominion doesn't know about Etherian technology," Dr. Carter said. "These tunnels are 50,000 years old. Nobody has been here for a very long time." The tunnel opened into a huge cavern inside the asteroid. When their lights hit the far wall, everyone on the bridge gasped. There, floating in the center of the cavern, was the most beautiful spaceship any of them had ever seen. The Starweaver was a mile long and looked like it was made from liquid metal and captured starlight. Its hull seemed to shift and change as they watched, sometimes looking solid, sometimes transparent. Strange patterns of light moved across its surface like living things. "My God," Jake whispered. "It's real. The fairy tale is real." As the Meridian got closer, something amazing happened. The Starweaver began to glow brighter. Lights appeared along its hull, and Jake could swear the ship was looking at them somehow. Tony Blake's instruments went crazy. "Commander, that ship is scanning us. But these readings don't make sense. It's like the ship is alive." Dr. Carter was recording everything. The legends were true. The Starweaver isn't just a machine. It has some kind of consciousness, some kind of mind. Suddenly, the alien ship sent a signal to the Meridian. It wasn't radio waves or any normal communication. The signal went straight into their computer systems and appeared on every screen in the ship. The message was simple but powerful. It was made of images and feelings rather than words. The ship was asking who they were and why they had come. It wanted to know if they were worthy of its help. Jake stood up from his chair. He didn't know how to talk to a living ship, but he had to try. "I am Commander Jake Morrison of the human species. We are at war with an enemy that wants to destroy U.S. We need your help to protect innocent people." The ship's response came immediately. More images flowed through their computers. The Starweaver showed them pictures of the Great War it had fought long ago. It had protected many different races from the dark creatures. It had saved entire worlds from destruction, but the ship had also seen many races destroy themselves with war and hatred. It had watched civilizations rise and fall. It would only help those who truly deserved its power. The ship began to test them. It sent probes into their computer systems, not to harm them, but to learn about humanity. It looked at their history, their wars, their achievements. It studied their hearts and minds to see what kind of people they really were. Jake felt the ship examining his memories. It saw his childhood on Earth, his training as a space officer, the battles he had fought against the Dominion. The ship saw his fear for his crew and his determination to protect innocent people. Dr. Carter gasped as the ship touched her mind. It saw her love of learning and discovery. It saw how she respected other cultures, even alien ones. The ship sensed her honest desire to understand and preserve knowledge. One by one, the ship examined each crew member. It saw Tony Blake's skill with machines and his loyalty to his friends. It saw Rachel Ford's brilliant mind and her drive to make things work better. It saw Linda Hayes's courage and her willingness to risk her life for others. For several minutes, the cavern was silent except for the hum of engines. The Starweaver was making its decision about humanity. Finally, the ship sent another message. This time, the images were warm and welcoming. The ship had found humanity worthy. It would help them fight the Dominion. But first, it needed to bond with a human captain, someone who could understand its mind and help it make decisions. The ship was looking directly at Jake. Somehow, he knew it wanted him to come aboard. But the choice had to be his. The ship would not force anyone to become its partner. Jake looked at his crew. These people had followed him across the galaxy and into danger. They trusted him to make the right decisions. Now he had to decide whether to trust a 50,000-year-old alien ship. "Commander," Dr. Carter said quietly, "the ship is offering to teach us. It wants to share its knowledge and help us become better than we are. This could save humanity." Before Jake could answer, alarms began ringing throughout the ship. Murphy's voice came over the intercom, tight with fear. "Commander, the Dominion fleet has found us. 50 ships just entered the asteroid field. They'll be here in 30 minutes. Through the ship's windows, they could see distant lights moving between the asteroids. The Dominion had brought their biggest warships, the kind that could destroy entire planets. Against that kind of power, the Meridian would last about 10 seconds. The Starweaver sent another message. It could protect them, but only if Jake agreed to become its captain. The ship needed a human mind to help it understand the current situation. It had been asleep for too long and needed someone to help it remember how to fight. Jake made his decision. "I'm going aboard that ship. Carter, Blake, Hayes, you're with me. Murphy, Ford, get the Meridian ready to run if this goes wrong." The 4 humans put on their spacesuits and crossed to the alien ship. As they approached, a section of the hull became transparent, showing them where to enter. When they stepped inside, the ship created air for them to breathe and gravity to keep their feet on the floor. The inside of the ship was unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls seemed to be alive, changing color and shape as they watched. Corridors appeared when they needed to go somewhere and disappeared when they were no longer needed. The ship guided them to what Jake guessed was the bridge. It was a round room with a chair in the center that looked like it was made from crystal and light. When Jake sat down, the chair began to change, molding itself to fit his body. Suddenly, Jake's mind filled with new thoughts and feelings, could sense the ship's consciousness touching his own. It was ancient and wise, but also lonely. It had been waiting for so long to find someone worthy of its friendship. The ship spoke to him, not with words, but with direct thought. It told him its true name was Keeper, and it had been the guardian of many worlds. It shared memories of great battles and beautiful planets. It showed Jake powers that seemed like magic, but were really advanced science. But the most important thing the ship shared was its purpose. The Starweaver existed to protect the innocent and fight against those who would harm others. It was not a weapon of conquest, but a shield for the defenseless. Jake felt the ship's systems coming online around him. He could sense its weapons, its engines, its ability to bend space and time. The power was incredible, but it came with great responsibility. Through the ship's sensors, he could see the Dominion fleet getting closer. Their leader was sending threatening messages, demanding that the humans surrender the alien technology. The Dominion commander promised to kill everyone who resisted. Jake smiled grimly. The Dominion was about to learn that some fairy tales were real, and some fairy tales had very sharp teeth. The Starweaver moved through space like a living thing made of light and metal. Jake Morrison sat in the crystal chair, his mind connected to the ancient ship's consciousness. Through the ship's eyes, he could see the Dominion fleet approaching. Like a swarm of angry insects, about 50 massive warships spread out across the asteroid field. Each one was bigger than a city and carried enough weapons to destroy a planet. The largest ship, a dreadnought called the Void Hammer, belonged to Supreme War Chief Vexther himself. The lizard-like alien commander had come personally to claim the ancient weapon for the Dominion. Dr. Carter, Tony Blake, and Commander Hayes stood on the Starweaver's bridge, watching in amazement as the ship's systems came alive around them. The walls showed images of space outside, making them feel like they were floating among the stars. Strange controls appeared in the air when needed, and vanished when their job was done. "Jake, can you hear me?" Dr. Carter asked, worried about her commander, who sat motionless in the crystal chair. Jake's voice came from speakers in the walls, but it sounded different somehow, older and wiser than before. "I can hear you, Lisa. The ship and I are learning to work together. It's showing me things that human science said were impossible." Through the ship's communication systems, they heard Vexther's voice demanding, "Surrender." The war chief spoke in broken human language, his words full of hate and anger. "Human insects, you will give us the ancient weapon. Surrender now, and we will kill you quickly. Resist, and we will hunt down every human world and burn them all." Jake felt the Starweaver's consciousness stir with anger. The ship had fought creatures like Vexther before, beings who used power only to hurt others. Through their mental connection, Jake sensed the ship's memories of protecting peaceful worlds from such monsters. "Keeper," Jake said, using the ship's true name. "Show them what happens when bullies pick on someone their own size." The Starweaver began to change. Its hull shifted from smooth metal to something that looked like crystallized starlight. Weapons appeared along its sides, but they were unlike any human or Dominion technology. These weapons seemed to be made from pure energy held in patterns of light. The ship moved toward the Dominion fleet with impossible grace. It didn't fly like a normal spaceship. Instead, it seemed to swim through space itself, bending the laws of physics around it. When Dominion sensors tried to lock onto it, the readings made no sense. Sometimes the ship appeared solid, sometimes it looked like empty space. Vexther ordered his fleet to attack. Hundreds of energy beams and missiles flew toward the Starweaver. For a moment, it looked like the ancient ship would be destroyed by the overwhelming firepower, but the Starweaver did something that made the Dominion gunners stop shooting in shock. The enemy weapons passed right through the ship, as if it wasn't there. The energy beams and explosions continued on into empty space, having no effect at all. "Impossible," Vexther hissed. "Nothing can phase through solid matter like that." The Starweaver had made itself temporarily intangible, existing in a slightly different dimension from normal space. It was a trick the Etherians had learned in their war against the dark creatures. To things that existed in normal space, the ship was like a ghost, but the ship could still affect the normal world when it chose to. The Starweaver rematerialized next to 3 Dominion cruisers and fired its weapons. But instead of destroying the enemy ships, something much stranger happened. The Dominion ships simply stopped working. Their engines shut down, their weapons powered off, and their life support systems switched to minimum power. The alien crews were unharmed, but their ships were completely helpless. What did it do to them? Commander Hayes asked in amazement. Jake's voice came from the walls, filled with wonder. The ship didn't destroy them. It convinced their computers that fighting was wrong. Somehow, it reprogrammed their entire fleet through their own weapons. The Starweaver had used the enemy's energy attacks as a pathway into their computer systems. In the split second when the weapons hit the ship's hull, Keeper had sent its own signals back along those energy beams. The ship's consciousness was so advanced that it could reprogram any computer system just by touching it. But this was only the beginning. As more Dominion ships opened fire, the Starweaver began to demonstrate abilities that seemed like magic. When a group of fighters tried to surround it, the ship created copies of itself, confusing the pilots until they didn't know which target was real. When the dreadnought Voidhammer fired its main cannon, a weapon that could crack a moon in half, the Starweaver caught the energy beam and redirected it back at the attacker. The massive ship's own weapon destroyed its forward armor and left it drifting helplessly. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Jenkins, flying her fighter alongside the USS Meridian, watched the battle in amazement. She had been a pilot for 10 years and thought she had seen everything. But the Starweaver was rewriting the rules of space combat. "Command, this is Jenkins," she radioed to Admiral Phillips back on Earth. "You're not going to believe what I'm seeing out here. The alien ship is taking apart an entire Dominion fleet like they're toys." But Jake could feel the strain on the Starweaver systems. Each use of its reality-bending powers required enormous energy. The ship had been sleeping for 50,000 years, and its power reserves were limited. Keeper warned him that they could only keep fighting at this level for a short time. "We need to end this quickly," Jake told his crew. "The ship is powerful, but it can't fight forever." Dr. Carter was studying the energy readings from her portable equipment. "Jake, I think I understand how the ship works. It's not just using technology. It's somehow manipulating the basic forces that hold reality together. But that kind of power has to have limits." She was right. The Starweaver was winning the battle, but Vexter was not stupid. The war chief had noticed that the ancient ship was using its strangest abilities less and less. He began to suspect that the weapon had weaknesses. "All ships concentrate fire. On the ancient vessel," he ordered, "rotate your attacks so it cannot rest. Something that powerful must have limits." The remaining Dominion ships, about 30 vessels that were still functional, began a coordinated assault. They fired in waves, giving the Starweaver no time to recover between attacks. Slowly, the ancient ship began to show signs of strain. Jake felt the ship's consciousness growing tired. Keeper had not fought a real battle for thousands of years. Its systems were magnificent, but they needed time to recharge between major efforts. "We need help," Jake realized. "Keeper, can you share some of your technology with the human ships? Give them the ability to fight alongside us?" The ship's response was immediate and positive. Beams of light shot out from the Starweaver to the USS Meridian and the small group of human fighters. The ancient technology merged with human systems, upgrading them in ways their builders had never imagined. Suddenly, Lieutenant Murphy found that his ship could move faster than ever before. The Meridian's hull began to shift and adapt, making it harder for enemy weapons to hit. Rachel Ford watched in amazement as new weapon systems grew from the ship's structure, weapons that fired pure energy instead of solid projectiles. Lieutenant Colonel Jenkins felt her fighter transform around her. The small craft became more agile and responsive. When Dominion fighters tried to attack her, her ship seemed to anticipate their moves and dance away from danger. But the most important change was in the human crews themselves. The Starweaver's consciousness touched their minds, sharing knowledge. and wisdom from 50,000 years of protecting the innocent. They began to understand not just how to fight, but why they were fighting. The battle turned into something beautiful and terrible. The human ships, enhanced by ancient technology, fought with skill and courage that amazed even their enemies. They protected each other, worked together, and never forgot that their goal was to protect innocent people, not just to win. But Vexter had one more trick to play. Deep in his dreadnought's cargo hold was the Dominion's most terrible weapon. The Void Render was a device that could destroy entire star systems by causing their suns to collapse. He had brought it to threaten Earth if the humans refused to surrender. "If we cannot have the ancient weapon," he declared, "then no one will have anything. I will destroy this entire system and hunt down every human world until none remain." The war chief began charging the Void Render, targeting the system's sun. If the weapon fired, it would cause the star to become a black hole, destroying everything within several light years. Jake felt the Starweaver's alarm through their mental connection. Even the ancient ship could not stop a weapon that powerful once it fired. But maybe, just maybe, they could prevent it from firing at all. "Keeper," Jake said urgently, "can you do that phase trick again? Make yourself intangible and get inside their ship?" The ship's response was hesitant. It could phase through matter, but rematerializing inside another ship was extremely dangerous. If something went wrong, both ships could be destroyed. "Do it," Jake ordered. "We have to stop that weapon." The Starweaver disappeared from normal space and reappeared inside the Void Hammer's cargo hold. The ship was now inside the enemy dreadnought, surrounded by confused Dominion soldiers. Alarms were ringing throughout the alien vessel as its crew tried to understand what had happened. Jake could see. The Starweaver drifted through space like a dying star, its hull flickering between solid metal and transparent energy. Jake Morrison sat motionless in the crystal chair, his mind still connected to the ancient ship's fading consciousness. Through their link, he could feel Keeper struggling to maintain awareness as its systems slowly shut down. Dr. Carter worked frantically at the ship's organic computers, trying to understand what was happening. The data streams flowing across. The living screens showed the Starweaver's condition in disturbing detail. The ship had used nearly all its power to contain the Void Render's explosion in that pocket dimension. Now it was dying. "Jake, can you hear me?" she called out. Her commander had not moved or spoken for 20 minutes. She was afraid that when the ship died, it might take Jake's mind with it. A weak voice came from the walls around them. "I'm here, Lisa, but Keeper is fading fast. The ship saved us all, but it might have killed itself doing it." Commander Hayes checked her instruments. The remaining Dominion ships were retreating, but they had not given up. Vexter was regrouping his forces and calling for reinforcements from other systems. In a few hours, hundreds of enemy ships would arrive to finish what they had started. Tony Blake was examining the Starweaver's engineering systems, trying to find a way to help the dying ship. "Commander, I think I understand the problem. The ship didn't just contain that explosion. It absorbed all that energy into itself. It's like trying to swallow a sun." Rachel Ford's voice came over the radio from the USS Meridian. "Sir, our upgraded systems are still working, but they're getting weaker. I think they're connected to the Starweaver somehow. If that ship dies, we lose all the improvements it gave us." Jake felt a deep sadness through his connection with Keeper. The ancient consciousness was preparing to shut down permanently. It had fought its last battle and saved its last world. After 50,000 years of service, the Starweaver was ready to rest. But then something unexpected happened. As Jake shared the ship's sadness, he also shared his own memories and feelings. Keeper saw through Jake's eyes how humanity had struggled and grown over the centuries. The ship saw their wars and their mistakes, but also their capacity for love, sacrifice, and hope. More importantly, Keeper saw Jake's crew and how they worked together. The ship witnessed the loyalty between Commander Hayes and her soldiers. It saw Dr. Carter's dedication to learning and preserving knowledge. It watched Tony Blake risk his life to help others, and Rachel Ford's brilliance in making broken things work again. Through the enhanced communication systems, Keeper also sensed the other human ships in the fleet. It felt Lieutenant Colonel Jenkins's courage as she protected civilian transports from Dominion raiders. It saw the determination of Admiral Phillips as she coordinated humanity's defense across dozens of star systems. The ship began to understand something important. It had spent so long thinking of itself as the lone guardian of peace in the galaxy. But perhaps it was time for others to share that responsibility. Perhaps it was time to teach rather than simply protect. Jake, the ship's consciousness whispered in his mind, there is another way, but it requires great sacrifice from your people. Through their mental link, Keeper showed Jake a possibility that the Etherians had planned but never used. The Starweaver was not meant to fight alone forever. It was designed to create a new generation of guardianships, spreading its consciousness and abilities across multiple vessels. The process would save the ship's life, but it would also change it forever. Instead of one mighty vessel, there would be many smaller ships, each bonded with a human crew. The original Starweaver would become the flagship of a new fleet, but it would no longer be the single, all-powerful guardian it had been for millennia. What would happen to you? Jake asked. Would you still be yourself? Keeper's response was, filled with both sadness and hope. I would become something new. Part of me would live in each ship, sharing consciousness with your people. I would still be Keeper, but I would also be human in a way. It is what the Etherians always intended. Dr. Carter had been listening to the conversation through the ship's communication system. Jake, the ship is offering to bond with our people. Permanently. It's not just giving us technology. It's asking us to become partners in protecting the galaxy. Before Jake could answer, alarms began ringing throughout the ship. Lieutenant Murphy's voice came over the radio from the Meridian. Commander, we've got big problems. I'm reading massive hyperspace signatures approaching the system. Looks like the entire Dominion 7th Fleet just arrived. Through the Starweaver's sensors, they could see the new threat. 300 ships had emerged from hyperspace, led by dreadnoughts the size of small moons. This was not just a raiding force. This was an army meant to conquer entire star systems. Admiral Phillips's voice came through on the emergency channel. All human vessels, this is Fleet Command. We're sending every ship we have, but it will take 6 hours to reach you. Hold position and try to survive until reinforcements arrive. Jake knew that 6 hours might as well be 6 years. The human ships, even with their Starweaver upgrades, could not face an entire Dominion fleet. They needed help, and they needed it now. Keeper, he said urgently, if we do this bonding process, how long will it take? The ship's consciousness stirred with new energy. With your people's help, perhaps 1 hour. But Jake, you must understand, once this begins, there is no turning back. Those who bond with the new ships will be changed forever. They will carry part of my consciousness within them for the rest of their lives. Jake thought about his crew and the people he was responsible for protecting. The choice was not really a choice at all. They could die fighting as they were, or they could become something new and maybe save humanity in the process. Do it, he said. Begin the bonding process. The Starweaver's hull began to glow with new energy. The ship was using the last of its power reserves to begin the transformation. Deep within its structure, new ships began to form, growing like seeds in fertile soil. Dr. Carter watched in amazement as the ship's organic computers showed her the process. The Starweaver was literally giving birth to a new fleet. Each new vessel would be smaller than the original, but they would all share the ancient ship's consciousness and abilities. "I need volunteers," Jake announced over the communication system. "The ship needs human minds to bond with. This is dangerous, and we don't know all the risks. Anyone who volunteers will be changed forever." The response was immediate. Commander Hayes stepped forward first. "Count me in, sir. I've been fighting the Dominion for 3 years. If this gives us a chance to stop them, I'm ready." Tony Blake raised his hand next. "I've always wanted to know how alien technology really works. This seems like a good way to find out." One by one, the crew of the Meridian volunteered. Lieutenant Colonel Jenkins piloted her fighter close to the Starweaver and asked to join the bonding process. Even some of the civilian transport crews volunteered, saying they were tired of running from the Dominion. Dr. Carter hesitated. She was a scientist, not a warrior. But as she watched her friends step forward to risk everything for humanity's future, she knew she could not stay behind. "I volunteer too," she said quietly. "Someone needs to record what happens. For science." The bonding process began with 12 volunteers, including Jake himself. The Starweaver extended tendrils of light that touched each person's mind. The sensation was like nothing any of them had ever experienced. They felt the ancient consciousness merging with their own thoughts, sharing memories that went back 50,000 years, but it was not a one-way process. Keeper learned from them as well. The ship experienced human emotions for the first time. It felt love, fear, hope, and determination through their minds. It began to understand what it meant to be mortal, to live a short life, but make it count. For something important. As the bonding deepened, the new ships began to take shape around them. Each vessel reflected the personality and skills of its human partner. Commander Hayes's ship was sleek and fast, designed for protecting others and striking quickly at enemies. Tony Blake's vessel was larger and more complex, equipped with tools for building and repairing other ships. Dr. Carter found herself bonded with a ship that looked more like a library than a warship. Its hull was transparent in places, showing vast databases of information from across the galaxy. Her vessel was designed to learn, explore, and preserve knowledge for future generations. Jake remained with the original Starweaver, but the ship was different now. It was no longer the lonely guardian it had been. Now it was the center of a living network, connected to all the other vessels and their crews. The transformation took exactly 57 minutes. When it was complete, 13 ships floated in space where there had been only one before. Each vessel pulsed with soft light, and they moved together like a school of fish, perfectly coordinated. The Dominion fleet was still approaching, but now they faced something they had never encountered before. These were not just ships with advanced weapons. These were living vessels that could think, adapt, and grow stronger with each battle. Vexter studied the sensor readings from his command ship and felt a chill of fear. The readings made no sense. The human vessels appeared to be communicating without using any known technology. 6 months after the Battle of Tau Ceti, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Starweaver, watching the stars beyond the main viewport. The ship looked different now. Its hull still shimmered with alien technology, but human modifications had been added throughout. The bridge combined Etherian consciousness technology with familiar human controls, creating something that was both ancient and new. Through his mental link with the ship, Jake could sense his fellow guardians spread across the galaxy. Dr. Carter's ship, the Knowledge Keeper, was exploring ancient ruins in the Vega system. Commander Hayes and her vessel, the Shield Bearer, were protecting a convoy of civilian ships near the border territories. Tony Blake's engineering ship, the Builder, was helping to construct new space stations for refugees fleeing Dominion territory. The Guardian fleet had grown beyond the original 13 ships. The Starweaver had taught human engineers how to construct new vessels using a combination of human and Etherian technology. Now 37 Guardian ships patrolled the galaxy, each one bonded with a human crew who had volunteered to become protectors of the innocent. But the real change was in how the galaxy itself had begun to transform. Word of the Guardian ships had spread to every corner of known space. Races that had been conquered by the Dominion were beginning to rebel, knowing that help was available. Pirates and raiders found that their attacks were often interrupted by ships that appeared from nowhere to protect their victims. Admiral Phillips walked onto the Starweaver's bridge, carrying reports from Earth Command. She had aged in the past. 6 months, but she looked more hopeful than Jake had seen her in years. "The Dominion is falling apart," she said with satisfaction. 3 of their member races have declared independence and asked for our protection. The Korthic Empire is down to half its original territory, and their Supreme Council is talking about peace negotiations. Jake nodded, but his expression was thoughtful rather than celebratory. "We've accomplished what we set out to do, Admiral. Humanity is safe, and the Dominion is no longer a threat to innocent worlds. But I keep thinking about what comes next." Through the ship's communication system, Dr. Carter's voice joined the conversation from the Vega system. "Jake's right to be concerned. We've become incredibly powerful, maybe too powerful. The question is, what do we do with that power?" This was the question that kept Jake awake at night. The Guardian ships were more advanced than anything else in the galaxy. They could defeat any enemy, protect any world, and solve almost any problem. But great power brought great responsibility, and Jake worried about the temptations that power might create. "Commander," Hayes's voice came through from her ship near the border. "I've been thinking about that too. Out here, some of the planets we've helped are starting to ask us to make decisions for them. They want us to choose their leaders, settle their disputes, even decide their laws. They think we're so much wiser than they are." Tony Blake joined the conversation from his engineering ship. "It's the same thing the Builder encounters. Entire civilizations want us to fix their problems for them. They're starting to worship us instead of learning to solve things themselves." Jake felt the Starweaver's consciousness stirring in his mind. Keeper had experienced this problem before, 50,000 years ago. The Etherians had faced the same temptation when they became the most powerful race in the galaxy. They had ruled wisely for a time, but eventually their power had corrupted them. That corruption had helped destroy their civilization when the dark creatures attacked. "The ship is reminding me of something important," Jake said to his friends. "The Etherians made the same mistake we're being tempted to make. They started believing that power gave them the right to make decisions for other people. They forgot that wisdom comes from experience, and you can't get experience if someone else is always solving your problems for you." Admiral Phillips frowned. "But Jake, these races need our help. The Dominion left them devastated. Their governments are in ruins. Their economies are destroyed. How can we just abandon them?" "We don't abandon them," Dr. Carter said from her ship. "We teach them. We share knowledge instead of making decisions. We show them how to solve problems instead of solving the problems for them." Jake smiled. This was why Dr. Carter had been chosen for the Knowledge Keeper. She understood that true help meant education, not domination. Over the following weeks, the Guardian fleet began to change how they interacted with the worlds they protected. Instead of making decisions for other races, they offered advice and options. Instead of solving problems directly, they taught people how to solve problems for themselves. The Builder worked with refugee populations to help them construct new homes and industries, but always with local workers learning the skills they would need to maintain everything themselves. The Shield Bearer protected convoys and colonies, but also trained local security forces to defend themselves. The Knowledge Keeper established schools and libraries on worlds. where education had been destroyed by war. But instead of human teachers running everything, Dr. Carter trained local educators to preserve and share their own cultures and knowledge. Was harder work than simply imposing solutions, and progress was slower. But Jake could see that the civilizations they helped this way became stronger and more independent. They learned to stand on their own feet instead of depending on the guardianships for everything. Not everyone appreciated this approach. Some races complained that the Guardians were being selfish by not using their full power to fix everything immediately. A few civilizations even accused humanity of abandoning them when the Guardianships refused to take over their governments. But other races understood what the humans were trying to do. The Altarians, whose homeworld had been liberated from Dominion control, sent a message that Jake treasured. Their planetary council wrote, "The Guardians gave us something more valuable than protection. They gave us back our ability to protect ourselves." As the months passed, Jake began to see the wisdom in the Starweaver's approach. The galaxy was becoming not just safer, but stronger. Races that had been oppressed for generations were rediscovering their own strength and courage. Young civilizations were learning to solve problems through cooperation instead of conquest. The Dominion itself was changing. With their empire crumbling and their military power broken, the Korthik and their allies were being forced to find new ways to interact with their neighbors. Some still chose aggression and found themselves facing guardianships. But others began to experiment with trade and diplomacy. Vexter himself appeared on the communication screen of the Starweaver one day, requesting a meeting. The former war chief looked older and less arrogant than he had during the battle at Tau Ceti. "Human Morrison," he said, using Jake's rank with grudging respect. "The Korthik Empire wishes to discuss terms for a lasting peace." Jake was surprised, but pleased. "What kind of terms, War Chief?" Vexther's scaled face showed an expression that might have been embarrassment. "Our young warriors are demanding to know how you defeated our fleet so easily. They wish to learn from you? Perhaps ... Perhaps there are better ways to prove one's strength than conquest." The peace negotiations took place on a neutral world, mediated by the guardianships, but conducted by the representatives of each civilization. Jake made sure that humanity did not dominate the discussions. Instead, the Guardian fleet served as protectors and advisors, ensuring that all voices were heard and no one was threatened or coerced. The final treaty was not perfect, but it was something that all parties had helped create. The Dominion agreed to stop attacking independent worlds and to allow their member races to choose their own futures. In return, the Guardian fleet would help with humanitarian aid and protection from external threats. Most importantly, the treaty established the principle that no single race or government had the right to rule over others. The Guardian ships would continue to patrol the galaxy, but their role would be to protect and teach, not to conquer or control. As Jake signed the treaty on behalf of humanity, he felt the Starweaver's consciousness flowing through his mind. The ancient ship was pleased with how its human partners had grown. They had accepted great power, but had not let it corrupt them. They had chosen to be guardians rather than rulers. Dr. Carter's final entry in her personal log captured the spirit of what they had accomplished. "We came looking for a weapon to save humanity from destruction. Instead, we found something much more valuable. We found a teacher who showed us how to become the kind of people the galaxy needed us to be." The fairy tale had ended, but the reality was just beginning. Across the galaxy, Guardian ships continued their patrol, protecting the innocent and teaching the strong to use their power wisely. They were no longer mythical weapons from ancient legends. They were proof that sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating your enemies, but from helping them become your friends. Jake Morrison sat in his crystal chair, his mind connected to the vast network of guardian ships and their crews. Through their shared consciousness, He could sense the peace and hope spreading across thousands of worlds. Children who had grown up in fear were now learning to dream of better futures. Civilizations that had spent centuries fighting were beginning to explore the stars together. The star,